Hello and welcome to Voices of Leadership. We're so excited to be here with you today. I'm Kathy Eastwood, the CEO and founder of E equals Y. Each week, we explore the fascinating world of leadership, featuring voices from various generations, industries, and backgrounds. A team's job is to deliver results. It's the job of the leader to make sure that it happens, to empower, inspire, and enable the teams to deliver. And there's a repeatable formula to drive that success. E3 leadership code: express plus engage plus execute, powered by emotional qualities. But how each leader shows up is different. And that's what we love to do, is explore different leaders and hear how they lead through change, adversity, and driving transformation. And today's guest is someone that is really close to driving lots of change in the industry and has seen a tremendous amount. So I'm so excited to have him here. And our guest today is Stephen Jeffries. Steve is a global customer experience and professional services executive with a master's in organizational excellence from the University of Pennsylvania. He's led transformation initiatives for Fortune 500 leaders, including Macy's, American Express, Intuit, Verizon, Southwest Airlines, and Ritz-Carlton. He's known for turning customer insights into measurable results. And Steve has helped companies reverse declines in satisfaction and drive growth through trust and listening. Steve believes that great leaders listen to their people, to their data, and to their customers. And I love this. And that's where the real growth begins. Steve, now this is a really impressive resume, but I know that I am just scratching the surface here. So why don't you share with our audience a bit of your journey, how your career has evolved, and really why you're so passionate about today's topic, which is the golden rule of leadership: the customer is always right.
Absolutely. So, believe it or not, I started out my career as a computer scientist. Computer science major was my undergraduate. I developed missile and torpedo systems for the U.S. DoD. Realized that was very rewarding and helping protect our nation. But one of the things I really loved about it was helping lead teams and helping serve clients. And I realized from that point forward that I had this high, you know, sort of affinity towards people and understanding their needs and helping them achieve their results and goals. So I really kind of understood people from, a 4D, 3D perspective, and kind of understanding what they're all about, what their motivations are about, kind of what they're frustrated about, and realized, which we'll get into in a little bit, that I had a high degree of emotional intelligence, high degree of empathy. I say a great customer service person has almost empathic abilities to be able to know what a customer is thinking or being frustrated about. But then I realized that I really wanted to, move up and kind of be more customer facing. So I, migrated into the world of everything to do with customer facing: product management, sales, marketing, and customer experience, which turns out to be my passion, and customer relationship management. And I really, really love that aspect. And what I love about it, and is my penultimate career accomplishment, is when I can have the team I'm leading walk away with, sort of a happy result that they didn't think they can pull off, and helping them achieve that, helping the company achieve their goals of, profitability and kind of, satisfying, the margins and everything else they want to accomplish from their strategic goals. But more importantly, pleasing the customer and actually delivering the customer what I call surprise and delight beyond their expectations, qualitative delivery. And that is what I call the triad of win, win, win. The company wins, the team wins because they enabled something for the customer. Customer walks away absolutely elated, telling many, many people about what had happened, on a very positive basis beyond what they anticipated. So that's kind of what led me to, from computer scientist all the way into customer experience, which is my true career passion. And it's turned out to be very important for companies and beyond what I ever thought it was. It's just something I enjoy doing. But as it turns out, it's critically important in terms of their profitability and goals.
I love it. And actually, as you're saying these words, Steve, it's something that we talk about a lot at Equals Y, but Ken Blanchard has a term. He calls it the leadership profit chain, So kind of like your win-win-win, when you focus on your people, then they're excited, then they treat your customers well. And when your
Yeah.
customers are treated well, that's when the profit comes. And so it's interesting to watch your journey because you followed that evolution, right?
Yeah.
And um, excellent. So let's talk about customer experience because that has really become very big in the industry. It's finally, I feel like people are finally realizing that it's all about the customer. And if the
Right.
customer isn't engaged, so what are you seeing and why do you think it's so important right now?
Well, I'll start with some, really amazing statistics, ones that even I look at them and say, this is something I never thought, would be the magnitude of what customer experience can do for companies. But, companies that deliver a superior customer experience bring in 5.7, almost 6 times more revenue than companies that have inferior customer experience. So just the revenue generation potential of getting this right is enormous for companies, almost 6 times more revenue for the companies that do it really well. And one of the things is when somebody doesn't deliver a great customer experience, one of your brands that we all know and despise, if a company delivers a great customer experience, on average they only tell 9 people. But if you really, really tick them off and really deliver poor customer service, they'll go off and tell at least 16 people about that experience. And for a lot of influencers, it's on an order of magnitude of 50 to 100 plus people they'll tell about this a bad experience. So talk about a hit to your sales and marketing, because now you have people, all these brand detractors out there telling everybody under the sun that they shouldn't do business with you and you're unscrupulous or you don't care about customers or whatever the story is. So you don't want that happening. And then the other thing is 93% of customers say, well, they're willing to pay more, to make repeat purchases for those who deliver great customer experience. So if you deliver me a great customer experience, most likely I'm going to buy from you again and have repeat purchases, especially if it's not what I call a durable product and you only buy it, once every 10 years. But most likely I'm going to come back to you in 10 years, even if it is a durable product, because you delivered that great experience. And then there are people who are willing to pay more. 86% of customers saying they're willing to pay more for a service when you deliver the experience to kind of go with that great experience. And then think about this in terms of customers you tick off and they leave you. It's 10 times more expensive to acquire a customer than it is to market to and sell to an existing customer. So the amount of effort you have to go to get that customer is inordinately expensive. And if you're not delivering a great customer experience, they're not going to be your customer for a long time. And then once you have them in the door, generating from new customers is 3 times more expensive than selling to existing customers. So not only do they have to work like tomorrow to get them in the door, once you get them in the door, then it really takes a lot to get them to buy from you. So it's much better to retain and satisfy that customer than it is to have to go through that churn and having to find new customers. And eventually companies find out that you churn through so many customers that you basically, have declining customer base that just basically runs you out of business. So
Yeah, those statistics are significant, right? As I'm listening to them. And by the way, for our audience, please feel free to let us know where you're calling in from. This is a great opportunity to network, but also to ask Steve questions because I look at these stats: 6 times more revenue for folks that are looking at that customer experience. That 9 to 16 difference, right? 9 people will promote you, and 16 will detract if it's bad. Those numbers, why do you think, with all of this statistic behind us, why do you think people still don't focus on that customer experience?
because they feel they can sell their way. A lot of companies feel that they can sell their way out of the situation. They can only sell enough. A lot of people feel that, customer complaints and issues are just one-off and customers are just complainers. I've heard that from even, top executives. And, companies, realize it's important, but they don't realize the true importance of it. So they feel they have, can tick off customers at the margin. It's not critically, it's not going to, catch them. They're still selling great guns until they start seeing longer term. So the customer attrition is a longer term statistic, and it doesn't catch up to companies for very long periods of time. So a lot of companies can believe they can just sell and keep their revenues up. And indeed, for a long period of time, it works. They can kind of keep the money coming in the door and getting new customers and churning them out. But over a longer period of time, eventually that cycle declines and declines until they're finally, either having to borrow money to stay afloat or, having to go bankrupt.
Yeah. Yeah. So the customer is at the center, right? That's the North Star, but we focus on the customer. And it's funny, my question is similar to, I think, where Ralph was asking as well. When you, each of your customers, let me make sure customers are not monolithic, right? So each one of them is very different. Yes. So how do you find a common denominator between how you deal with customers and making sure that your people really know how to deal with them and treat them the right way?
Absolutely. So what I have developed is what is like what I call a common customer baseline. So which is true for most, I'd say 80 to 85% of your customers, but then also overlay a customer's profile, a specific customer one-to-one profile of what they bought, what their complaints were, what types of interactions they've had, what their purchase history looks like. And also, too, what their even tone inflection is when they're calling into customer service. Is it something that, they're an advocate? And then overlaying all the social media interactions they might have had. So I really have a 360-degree view of each and every customer. And, whether they're an advocate, whether they're repeat, high volume purchaser, whether they're frustrated based on their tone inflection and the interaction with the customer service center, and how many cases, how are they resolved, one and done, or multi iterations, which affects your customer effort score. So each customer has a profile, but they also have a metric associated with them in terms of, the revenue score, the customer satisfaction score, their NPS score. That tells me all about that customer, so I can interact with them on a one-to-one basis versus treating every customer with that common baseline. So there is a set of truths that are true for, most of your customers, but then everybody's individual, and you have to understand, that customer individually to actually interact with them. And the team is, mentored to be able to interact on a one-to-one basis, knowing everything we know, because how many times have you called in and you typed in your number or you typed in your account, and then you get to somewhere else and somebody says, "Oh, well, what's your account number?" And it's like, wait a minute, that. I already given you that information. And to make sure that the institution has this 360-degree view of customer interactions, including real time. So if I type my account number in, the next person better know it, because that's just going to frustrate the heck out of me. And knowing what my individual situation is, and you have to know that. You have to know what's true for all your customers, and you have to know what's true for this individual customer and treat them accordingly on a one-to-one personalized basis.
Yeah, I love it. So, what I'm hearing is you got to make sure you have the processes in place to help your frontline, whoever is working with your customers, so that they're set up for success. But Debbie had an interesting question here is, can you talk about the investment and the training needed in frontline staff to make sure that they are giving a great customer experience?
Absolutely. So what I recommend is a multi-level certification program for your frontline customer service staff. It's, for example, some of the simple things, straightforward is etiquette, customer interaction, being able to read their profile accurately, being able to proactively interact with them based on that profile. And then some of your more specialized customer service, have other certifications. For example, some of the banking and credit card, there's certain things that you have to know particular to that person's credit history and interactions and, issues with their credit account, and actually know that inside and out, and kind of how it affects, their credit profile. So that's another level of specialization. So every customer service representative has to go through a level of training and certification. So, they're sort of baseline. So if they come in, they have to maybe take 3 basic courses, and they're now certified to now interact with the customer. The next set of courses may be another 3 to 4 programs they have to go through to get the next certification. And each time they go through this, they're qualified to handle different cases and move up in terms of the customer value that they're interacting with. For example, American Express has a concierge desk that deals with their Black Card Centurion members, which is a very elite, high net worth group. And those people are trained, they have unbelievable levels of certification, high degrees of empathy and etiquette. And they are, when you get on the phone with them, you want to think they're your best friend, because they have that level of training, that level of emotional intelligence to be able to deal with these people and kind of deliver what they want and actually build a rapport. And that's kind of part of the deal, is they, are trained to build a rapport and kind of be that person's right hand assistant in helping, do a lot of things for these select group of people.
Yeah, I agree. And when you think about it, Steve, and we've talked a lot about leadership skills and things like that. Leading your customers is similar to leading your teams, right?
Yes.
You need to kind of have the same set of skills, if you will. I know you have, for the role of leadership, and when you think about customer service and experience and leadership capabilities, what do you look for your leaders to have in this sphere?
So first and foremost, and I think it's the keystone of not only a great leader in a customer experience, but many different disciplines and industries, is emotional intelligence. As I said, somebody who's a true empath that really can kind of sift through, what the customer is frustrated about, what they're trying to tell you, what their needs are, and even unstated needs, being able to pull that from the customer when that wasn't even the agenda why they called you. Is kind of like, what else can we do for you? What else are we not doing as a brand that we can actually deliver to you? And I found countless millions and millions of dollars. I've stopped counting after a while, of being able to go through, advisory boards, customer insights groups, or just interactions on the call center, of saying, what is it that our brand is not delivering that we could actually offer to you that you would be interested in? And countless times, it's never in the data. One of the great traits of a customer experience leader is being data driven, but a lot of times it's not in your data, and being able to be empathic and asking your customers, interacting with them live. And I've done a lot of live sessions with customers, and saying, what is it you're feeling? Why are you frustrated? And back to our title, customer's always right. And I would say 95, 99% of the time, in between that ratio, customer is always right. Because they have a viewpoint. They have something that they're frustrated about. You may not see it, you may not agree with it, but they're coming to you with a perspective, and your job is to have that empathic skill to be able to sift through what it is. What are they seeing? Why are they frustrated? Or what is it that you're not delivering that they need? And being able to kind of say, okay, I understand now. I see your perspective. And you, like I said, a lot of times companies don't agree with it. They'll just brush it off and say, I had a customer that doesn't know what they're talking about. And I've actually had a CEO tell me that the customer doesn't really know what they want. And it's incredible, some of the companies that, are not leaders, obviously, say that. But, if you can get to that and you can really sift through and understand a customer, then you have the golden nugget, of like where they're coming from, and know how to solve a complaint, or know how to, deliver something that's new that they haven't had before. And again, that turns back into new revenue for the company. And then,
yeah, and when I think about it, most people, when they're frustrated, there's some fear, uncertainty, or doubt, or ego. Something's out there. And so what you're suggesting is we need to always dig in and understand what that is.
right.
But you said something else while you were talking, and it's most people just want to feel that they've been heard.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. And when I'm on the phone with a customer support person or someone helping me out, and when they go, I hear you, or I feel you, or I get why you're frustrated, that alone, just, you can feel like the whole energy come down. I'm like, okay, they get it.
Right.
And it makes a huge difference.
Or another thing the companies are afraid to do and say, I can see why you're frustrated because I'd be frustrated myself. So when you truly get it, tell them, hey, this is, you're not, out in, left field. I would be frustrated too. And we're going to get to the bottom of this and resolve this, and kind of being their advocate, not only saying, I understand, I empathize with you. I understand I'd be frustrated too. But now that I can see, you've been wronged or, so situations not something typical that we run into, we're going to help you resolve it. I'm here as your advocate to help you get to, a happy place, and, whatever it takes, we'll do that. And that, as you said, diffuses that hostility. It kind of makes the person feel like they have an advocate now and somebody that's going to work with. So then it becomes critically important to pair that customer with this customer service agent, because now they feel, I don't want to have to go through that again and prove my case. And then, have somebody kind of say, oh, I get it. Now I'm on your side too. And, have to go. So it's just like retyping your customer number in, I want that person as my case advocate. And that's a best practice too, as opposed to when I call in next time and if it hasn't been resolved, then I get somebody else, I have to explain it all over again.
When you're getting people to understand this concept, do you often suggest that they put themselves in the seats of their customers?
Absolutely. That's the only way you can become empathic. It's sort of, would you be frustrated too is a term that I use, based on the explanation. I call in law, it's called the reasonable person standard. In customer experience, it's very similar. Would a reasonable person, being the customer service representative, be also ticked off and, be kind of feeling not too good about the brand. And, a lot of times that the people who can empathize with that and kind of see the perspective, even if they don't say, I'd be frustrated too. They don't agree with that, but they can kind of see, where the person's coming from at least.
And from your experience, if I look at your resume and the different companies you've worked for, and it's vast, is it the same across all industries, the basics that you're talking about as far as emotional intelligence and customer advocacy?
Yes, absolutely. So I consider the best practice top 10, traits of a leader. The other thing is having, cultural intelligence and, having a data-driven mindset, so understanding the data, but also adding sort of that live customer view based on interactions and, whether it be customer advisory groups, insights groups, or your golden source of information, which is through the call center. They're willing to tell you all sorts of things if you just ask them. You just have to take the time. So, I don't necessarily advocate for having timed calls and really being getting off the phone as quickly as possible, resolving it. Yeah, one and done is good, but there's also great gems of information that the customer is willing to tell you. If you just take the time to interact with them. So it's not all about just resolving the call. It's building a relationship and kind of finding out what's different about this customer, so you can then further the profile and kind of understand them at a more in-depth basis.
So, this role that we're talking about now, right? This is a new role in the last few years that's really coming, that the customers have a seat at the table, right? And we talked about it, and sometimes it's called the chief customer officer, maybe it's the chief client officer. Tell me a little bit more in our audience about what this role is and why it is gaining so much speed.
Yeah, so I'll take another role that's always representative at the CEO level. It's the chief sales officer. So somebody that's in charge of selling, making sure the revenue numbers are there. And this really is where the rubber hits the road, whether you're really a sales-oriented company or you're really a customer-oriented company. And it's okay to be both, but you have to have representation. So chief sales officers at like most companies. So somebody that's in charge of revenue, some companies call chief commercial officer, but it's always somebody that's selling and in charge of getting that revenue in the door, and doing it at a good margin. They are represented at the CEO level, and they're, reviewing what were my sales last week, what were my sales last quarter, how are we doing in terms of sales health. The new role, a chief customer officer, is the fastest growing new chief member that's represented at the CEO level, because if you really want to measure your customer health and do that on a periodic basis, and have all your other CEOs know what the health of your customer is and how we're improving it, it has to be represented at the CEO level. And if you look at some of the best companies that are delivering great customer experience, they all have something equivalent to the chief customer officer. And generally the ones who do not have that. And it's not always the case. Sometimes the owner or somebody else is kind of minding that. It's not universally true, but generally the companies are doing great things in customer experience, have a chief customer officer, and realize that the CEO really needs to know and monitor customer health on a periodic basis, just like they do their sales numbers and their revenue numbers. And if you're not doing that, then you're not serious, in my opinion.
I agree. I often coach CEOs. And I said the other big one is the people need to be represented, right? So you need the customer represented and have a seat at the table, and you need the people represented, because that is your business. Without customers, you're not going to have a business. Right. Without the people, you're not going to have customers. So that's the folks that are at the table to help make the business decisions on what you do and why you do them.
And again, a lot of the greats have chief people officer that are represented at the CEO level. So if you're really passionate and you're saying, "Oh, customers are our most valuable asset," where's the chief customer officer? It's going to put your money where your mouth is. And if you're not serious about it, then generally you don't have it.
I agree. So you talked about a couple. You kind of mentioned it, but you had 10 traits for a customer experience leader. What are those 10, if you can share them with our audience?
Sure. Emotional intelligence, which we covered in depth. And then customer advocacy. So once you understand the customer, where they're coming from, then you really have to advocate for the customer, whether it be to your product group, to your sales group, wherever that source of frustration is coming from the customer, you have to advocate for the customer, and you have to be their champion, just like the chief customer officer does. And you have to get to resolution if it's an issue, or you have to push forward with these new products or services. If they're telling you they really want these things and they're willing to pay more for these things, then you have to really be advocating and moving these programs forward to, get their needs satisfied one way or another, if it's a complaint or if it's something new. Effective communication, obviously, you have to interact not only with your team, but also with your customers effectively. And then conflict resolution, if it's a case where customers are calling in, complaining about something that needs to come to resolution. If you have a high degree of empathy, then you're not necessarily going to get in conflict. But if you do, and I've had some what I call very unreasonable customers that actually got into close to being conflict, and being able to manage through that and diffusing the situation. So that's critically important. I would say problem solving, decision making, which goes with any industry, any role, and being able to, this is a really difficult customer case. How do we resolve this? And how do we bring the teams to bear to actually deliver this? Data driven, understanding the data and the customer profile, coaching and mentorship, to be able to, develop the team. And again, the training, certification, one-to-one coaching for people that are, talking live. So a lot of times I'll, go into companies and, go in with a customer service supervisor or an individual and be co-live on the call and kind of monitoring the call. And, a lot of times now AI will do that for you, but a lot of times the live interaction or even setting the standard of kind of how you do this is very important. Strategic vision, to be able to put together a roadmap on, how to improve the customer experience and being able to see the future of what that customer interaction looks like. And then the last, especially if you have multinational operations, is cultural intelligence. Not only within a country. I mean, New York City is vastly different than interactions on, San Francisco. Northern Minnesota is a lot different than, southern Louisiana. So you're really understanding the culture differences and being able to kind of accentuate, those differences and interact with people the way they want to be interacted with. And, a lot of times for some of my more recent clients and positions, it's really multinational. We're, talking to people in Germany or Asia or Mexico. Since I was in charge of the Americas, what was the Mexican cultural differences that had to be adhered to and be wary of when you interacted from that region. So very, very, and it kind of is related to the emotional intelligence and really just understanding better, this time from a cultural perspective. So those are in my opinion, the top 10 that are critically important, that are really transportable to other industries and other professions.
Yes, absolutely. And with all of the leadership development that we do, that's what we focus on. Is I think you hit on every one of them. And the most, it's about knowing yourself as well and being an authentic leader, right? Because that's how you drive that emotional intelligence. I do. So we do have an interesting question. So I don't know if you saw this one come in, but how do you feel AI is going to serve the customer service field and the experience? Or will it be a source of frustration going forward? Because I think a lot of people already get frustrated, like, I can't get a human on the phone. Right. So is this a positive, or is this going to accentuate challenges?
Well, again, it goes back to understanding your customer profile. So AI, if a customer really enjoys that live interaction with a person, the worst thing you want to do is get them into an AI, or sometimes a death loop and kind of not giving them the answers, or if they particularly have difficult cases, really understanding, if a person's, wanting to interact, understanding that profile and kind of the way they do that. AI, and from a different perspective, from a back office perspective, is going to help save time. For example, going through all that customer data and coming up with a customer profile that a customer service representative would better understand is one way that AI can save a lot of time and make the customer service rep more efficient by summarizing all the data and all the things they've seen from a profile and delivering up sort of, maybe 5 headlines that say, what is this customer all about? So, the AI basically digs through all the interactions and data and kind of comes up with a summary for that customer, what they're all about and what they like or dislike. That saves an inordinate amount of time and makes that customer service representative more efficient. So I would say from a back office perspective, it's invaluable for saving time and making people more efficient. From a front office perspective, unless you have some really, really good interaction AI, customers at this point of AI evolution tend to be more frustrated with it than satisfied with it from an interaction, because some people, really enjoy it. Some people, love the self-service, and you have to understand who those people are and prefer that kind of interaction versus a live person. But right now, the pendulum hasn't swung towards the majority, wanting the AI interaction versus customer human interaction and being able to solve a problem or talk to somebody. But it'll get there, I'm sure, when AI is more sophisticated and really can understand based on that profile what you're calling into and how to resolve those really, really complex issues. And it takes a company a large investment to get there. And a lot of companies just kind of put AI in as a cost saving measure, and that doesn't really work. It's, you're not really serving the customer in a qualitative way. You're just basically saving money, and customer, feels that.
Yeah. I also think about it from the side of putting the AI in the back end, where avoid some of the problems and the frustrations, right? So if we can have a great customer experience, you don't have people calling in and have to worry about they're not getting a live person, because they're off on their merry way having a good experience.
Right.
So
another way to use AI too is to sift through all the social media data and kind of spot problems before they happen. So a lot of times I'll, go through the cloud data of all the social media posters and, kind of come up with is propensity positive or negative, and what are people complaining about? And a lot of times you can see trending issues that can turn into be a crisis, or customers complaining about issues. And a lot of times I've been able to prevent, what I call brand crises by spotting problems and people having them real time, fixing it before it ever permeates to sort of the general customer base. So AI is invaluable for that, being able to, what I call sound the alarm that says we have a crisis on our hands, because now we have people posting all over about, our configurator or something that has gone wrong in their interaction, or, customer experience is giving wrong answers or things of that nature. And I can spot all those problems miles ahead before it hits the general customer base. It's sort of these early indicators that come up and have me do corrective action before it becomes a real brand meltdown. And a lot of the automobile manufacturers do this. So they're seeing, I have a problem with my brakes. I almost hit something, or I did, that not only gets reported to NHTSA, but it also, creates a lot of issues in terms of, oh my God, we're going to have some really bad liability and people are going to get injured. And if you can spot those early on by people, posting, different places, then you can, do a live recall. You can kind of, tell people how to, prevent that situation, or you can really spot some major troubles coming your way early on, so you can adapt, you can react to them in real time.
Yeah. So Steve, we're way over our time. This conversation is fascinating to me because customers are so important in leadership. I'm very passionate about. But one of the things I'm taking away from this conversation, when you think about the chief customer officer role and just customer experience, there's a lot to it. It's not just simply a customer experience survey or what's their satisfaction. It's really, what I heard is, it's the people, the processes, and the tools, right? And the
Yes.
mindset to set forth and go after that win-win-win scenario that you talked about.
Yeah.
Any last advice for someone that's thinking about, really diving deeper into customer experience or trying to implement it better at their companies?
Yes. So one of the things that, I didn't mention was really, mentoring a team to have a customer first mentality. And I say customer service is everybody's job. It's not the job of a customer service representative or a chief customer officer solely. It's really everybody's job. So, developing a customer first mindset in all the interactions. So if you're in sales, developing some of the best practices of how you interact with a person, to sell to them in a customer experience superior way. Something you can do when you market to them. How do you do that delivers that delightful customer experience? And we've all seen these examples of brand meltdowns where the customer wasn't really considered, and people having to redo brands and the different types of train wrecks, or cancel products because they thought it was going to be successful and they didn't really consider the customer. So every person in the organization can develop a customer first mentality and mentor and train their teams to be able to deliver that exceptional customer experience, no matter what it is that you do. Product management, pricing, it's really kind of understanding and ingraining that customer first culture in everything you do, because customer experience is everybody's job.
Absolutely. I so agree. And it's why it's part of that profit chain, lead your people well, teach them the emotional qualities, they'll teach your customers well, and that's how the customers succeed. So Steve, thank you so much for joining us today. I know we didn't get to everybody's questions, but we will continue to monitor all the questions. So if you even have other ones you want to jump in after this call, please feel free, and we'll answer them. And if you want to learn more about how can you be a more emotionally intelligent leader, please follow us at e=y.com. And again, Steve, thanks so much. And everyone, have a fantastic weekend. Thank you.
Thank you.